the idea of 8 straight, playoff opportunities for this team, being something that we'll never want to take for granted. Certainly this was a group that, as we gathered again in October of last year, we had certain goals in mind, and defending our title was certainly one of them. And we felt like, perhaps we had one more run in us. And, as we moved through the season, some of our challenges became apparent. And at the end of the day, I think as the dust settles for me, and I realize, all the dynamics in there, that we did the best we could. And I think, Sylvia Fowles' season, after being so dominant and winning MVP, and to come back and to set career highs in so many categories and to be as good. I can't say enough about Syl, and playing injured. She has a ruptured something. I'll let somebody that's more qualified, but played injured for half the season. And I just can't say enough about what she did for us. And then, for us to be able to send Lindsay, Whalen out here at Target Center the way that we did on August 21st, I think it was. Those were some highlights for me. And obviously the All-Star game was a big-time highlight for our franchise. I'll take questions. That's correct. Yeah. We so back when she was injured, it was, we always, obviously right away, we have such great resources here that as soon as it happens, we're over there, taking a look at things. And at the time, it was more of a sprain. She continued to compete, and obviously it worsened. And so now you're looking at a rupture. I think it would be a more significant injury for a baseball player than for a basketball player, being her off arm. So there are some plans in place as far as her ability to recover from that. Not at this time. And I think it's a little bit premature to kind of really detail it as fact, because I think anytime you get a diagnosis, there's always a process of a player considering options and maybe getting other opinions and that sort of thing. So right now, the information is that it's a rupture, and I think she's considering her options as far as next steps, I think, would be most accurate.
Cheryl, do we know if that will affect her off-season or plans to go overseas or anything like that?
At this time, still doesn't plan to go overseas, so that would be unaffected. She communicated that to us last off-season, that would be not necessarily her last, but she would be considering not going over this off-season.
And then how do you kind of balance maybe trying to take time to appreciate everything this group has accomplished over the last 8 years with whatever disappointment there is that you weren't able to do more this season?
Yeah, I think I'm already there, in that there were many challenges until we write a tell-all book. You won't be able to know everything, but just in going through exit interviews, I think you get confirmation of a lot of things, because people are, players are pretty open in those things. And I think at the end of the day, they felt pretty proud of themselves to be able to keep it together with a lot of things kind of converging. So I think for me to get through the season, honestly, I had to do that. I had to consider, this was a group that, for 7 straight seasons had a historic run. And with that comes a cost. And so I have known those things, especially at the completion of the 7th season and our 4th championship, and just spending time with our players. I knew where they were. I knew how hard this has been. And like I said, success comes with a cost. And I knew what it was taking for us to, kind of keep it going, muster it up. And then, the type of season in terms of the more compressed schedule and, aging roster, a lot of things. And there's a lot of other, life kind of things that happen to people. And so if you just throw all that in the pot and you go, I think I started doing those things, at the completion of our 7th season together. And so it's hard for me as a competitive person to go through it, to live it, and to know, when I say to know, but I felt like we had I still had a great belief. And I don't know that I've ever been that realistic. And so maybe I wasn't realistic, but they made me believe, and that's what I tell them, that they, at times they make things look easy, and that sets them up for, these expectations. And, I think it probably for me as a coach, just wanting to keep it going, wanting to, defy the odds kind of thing. And I don't have any regrets about that approach. And, but I know we hit a certain point where I know what they needed from me. And so I just wanted them to do the best that they could and enjoy the journey as much as they could. That's all I wanted from them. And wherever the chips fell, they fell.
Cheryl, how did Maya come out of the season physically, and do you think she plans on playing overseas?
Physically, I don't remember anything from the season or the exit physicals. I don't think there's anything there. I don't think you'll see Maya play overseas.
How do you evaluate the roster going forward? There's a lot of players not under contract for next year, even including Maya. How do you kind of reshape things as you see it now?
Well, we've got a lot of work to do. We're in a place that we haven't been in since probably 2010, maybe even before that. 2010 being my first season of kind of trying to put this together. So for me, since 2010, in that. We gained a lot of information over the last year about the effect of an aging roster, the path of the league. So I think, we collect a lot of information, but now it's a little bit different than other professional leagues with regard to free agency. It's not like your pool is really deep and places you can go to fill those needs. It's not going to be easy to do. And then currently, from an asset value, we're fairly limited, in making a decision. And I have no regrets. Who can have regrets about 4 championships in 7 years, about the path that we took? But now as we, end of an era with a Lindsay Whalen as running this thing into this next phase, we're going to be left with some challenges and, just a lot of work to do in terms of figuring out how do we, backfill positions and, invest in some younger players, obviously our 6th pick, and, we have 14, 18, 20. We're going to have to work really hard, because those picks aren't typically ones that, lend towards, competing for a championship. So we just have work to do, and we'll be on the horn, seeing what players might be available in trade and see what we can do.
Do you have any clue yet as to the futures of some of your veteran players? Is anybody thinking about retirement, or have you gotten there yet?
Well, I think they all think about retirement. I don't think that's, but there's not an indication. I have one exit interview of one of the ones that would be a candidate for that I haven't had, it's Rebecca Brunson. And so, obviously, first thing I talk about with Seimone, I talk about it with Syl, I talk about what's the, it's not uncommon. This is not the first year that we've done this. We talk about, mostly because I want to know what they want it to look like. And how can I help them, achieve what they want it to look like? And, talk with Seimone about it. And when I say look like, not your retirement ceremony, just on the court. What goals do you have left? What part of this do you want to be? Things like that, not with regard to any sort of ceremony. And so I still have to have that conversation with Rebecca being probably maybe the leading candidate for talk of retirement. So we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. What do you want to do? You want to go another year? I think at this point when we talk about it, it's two-sided. It's not just what they want. We have to be mindful of our roster as well and say, okay, if you still want to do it, this is what we think it should look like. Tell us what you want. Does it fit with what we need? And then we just try to figure it out. And no question, Rebecca Brunson. We always talk about her impact on our team and over the time here, and the reason why she has 5 championships. And losing Rebecca, in the Atlanta game, clearly had an effect on our ability. I think our defensive rating just skyrocketed, and we just weren't a lethal enough offensive team to overcome. That we enjoyed the space we got in starting Maya at the 4. but we were nowhere near as difficult to play against on the defensive side of it.
If it wasn't injury or physical related with Maya, have you been able to kind of look back or pinpoint why, at least by her standards, this wasn't her best season?
Yeah, I have all the information, and I know. Yes. But obviously not.
Well, maybe you don't want to share this, but there were a lot of nights when she didn't look like she had her legs underneath her. When she just, but the condensed schedule hurt a lot of players. And
Yeah.
was she just more tired, more beat up?
I don't think she was more than everyone else. No. Do I think she was affected by it? Yeah. I mean, I think she was the one that was most vocal in saying her description that was inhumane. What they were being asked to do. But there's no question Maya was they were all affected physically. I mean, ask all of them when you have them here. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I said this before. I don't know if I said it in front of this media group, but I've said it on the road. It was a terrible decision by the league to have this schedule. We didn't do this in 2014. This was an awful decision, and it did not have the players in mind and the product in mind. To be honest with you, because when the players are affected like that, and you had a forfeited game, and it was an awful decision. I understand the difficulty of our league in trying to carve out our space. We're juggling European seasons. We're juggling USA basketball, which frankly, I think something's got to give. Why is the WNBA making concessions everywhere? And at some point, we have to say, this can't happen anymore. We'll make a concession here or there, but to continue to make concessions everywhere, and we take the brunt of something like this, is just unacceptable. And so I think every player, I mean, you're talking about Nneka Ogwumike fighting mono. I mean, we have players with vertigo and it was ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, Maya was not the only one on our team, and she was certainly not the only one in the league. Players played through it. Some players had record seasons, just like any other normal season. But in the case of Maya, it was, I think, just a small piece.
Coach, do you know if any of there are plans to send any of your coaches abroad with any of the younger players?
Yeah, we talked to some of the younger players about that. We'll be visiting them, and a dual, kind of a dual thing in terms of going to see them and also, explore, other players in free agency, so I'll have an advantage at the World Cup in terms of the scouting piece, but then also. And we have some players that maybe didn't get the minutes that, we said to them, it's a two-part deal. If you were good enough, you would have played, period. Especially this year. So, it's a two-part deal. You got to take responsibility for those things. You got to get better. And we gave them, some information, and then we're going to be monitoring that progress. So that's really important to us. At this point, nobody is safe as we transition. And so it's time for them, to step up.
You had said that you were hoping that you and someone were on the same page in terms of sprinting to the finish, as it were, in a career in kind of in the way that maybe Tarasi did in terms of doing what's necessary to get the most out of it. After having talked with her, do you feel like you guys are on the same page there?
I think we're on the same page in that I can't make anybody feel a certain way, and I communicated that. I can communicate what I'd like to see, Seimone isn't Diana Taurasi in terms of, too many things. But and being on the same page means I have to accept what a player wants. And like I said, at this point, I've said we're not following anybody around, checking on them and say, hey, send us, a picture of you on the scale and things that you do, along the way, along the journey. We're not doing that anymore. Not to Seimone, not to, we're just not doing that. They have all the information they need. They have all the information with regard to nutritional, physical. In Simone's case, she has to, she's not somebody who can go out there and just condition like crazy and pound her knees. So she has to find alternate ways. And then I think, I think some of this, with older players is I don't think that they think that decline happens to them. They don't, and it's not going to happen to me, and so, we certainly we have a ton of resources, and that's what I offer them. Whatever your goals are, please, like wherever you want to do this, we have resources, and we want to work, in tandem to be able to accomplish what they want. So, of course, we're on the same page. I may not like everything, but we're on the same page.
Yeah, getting back to your young players for a second, Temi and Ceci got more minutes as the season went along, and AJ got less. What did you need to see from her? What do you need to see from her next year to get her back in the rotation?
Yeah. Well, first, what I saw from Temi was a player that plays with a sense of urgency, that absorbs information and applies it quickly. And then, frankly, Temi was a beneficiary of a not-so-deep post group. In the case of Xanda Lacini, we started with her early on. We identified that this was a young player that wasn't getting opportunity a lot of through what we were doing at practice and shoot around, the times that we, earlier in the season when we were having those things. And we identified that sometimes when you're a reserve player, you don't get the reps in practice, and to earn, what this coach is saying, you have to earn these things. And so we tweaked a little bit, and we were creating more opportunities to observe her more, and through that she earned time, as well as her being at a position that's not very deep in our league, which is the small forward. So those two were the beneficiary, I think, of positional depth. In the case of AJ, it's two things. One, she played a lot early on. As we navigated our new situation at the point guard spot, in that Lindsay was clearly not going to be in position to do a lot of things that she did physically. That was uncharted water for us, and I didn't love. It was through the first 9 games. I didn't love what that looked like, and AJ was getting opportunities through that, and we were 3-6. And PER wise, things that we look at, Lindsay was higher by a lot, even at whatever percentage of Lindsay Whalen you could say that she was. A Tanisha Wright being the competitor and the willful player that she is something that AJ just doesn't have yet. She just doesn't have, it's just in her second year. There's a, for some young players, there's a disconnect on, quote, whose fault it is, why they're not playing. And I find that young players that understand that it's them and that it's their decision to force a coach to play them, those are the ones that are successful. And so we're teaching young players those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, positionally, with having Danielle and Lindsay at the one, and I made a decision with Lindsay that we weren't going to write her off. And we sat on the airplane and headed to Phoenix, and I told her how I didn't love her playing 7 minutes, us basically not having her part of the game plan. That wasn't going very well for us. And that if we weren't going to win, we weren't going to win with Lindsay in there, is what we decided. Because that was the commitment that we made to this team. That this team was going to do this core group that's done this for 7 years. And so AJ was affected by that, and I talked to her about that as well. Some of this has nothing to do with her. I told her that when we drafted her, we didn't need her. Had nothing to do with her as a person or her game, but we just simply didn't need her positionally. And so that was her first year. We really didn't need her. She carved out a little bit at the end. And then we kind of got to this place where the information I had over the offseason on Lindsay, frankly not being sure whether she would make it to the season, and the information that I had, we went the path of needing a more veteran backup. Or if Lindsay didn't make it to the season, having a Danielle Robinson running our team in a year that we felt like we could compete for a championship. We didn't think AJ was ready for that. So we basically signed over her. And virtually the same concept with Tanisha Wright. We felt like the path, the formula that we had in our 7-year time was putting players behind our veterans like a Tanisha Wright, that in the event that Seimone misses time, you have a starter in this league, and that we could, buoy ourselves and make our run for the championship. As the season, goes along, obviously the ability to defend the title in this season, got really, really difficult. That has nothing to do with AJ, all those decisions, other than she wasn't ready. It was our assessment that she wasn't ready. When she did get time, it's not a case where this was a player that showed us she was playing great, and we just didn't play her. There were times we probably needed her to play better. But that's not to say that she's not good enough to play in this league. And that's what we talked to her about, that it's now her time as we transition. Now she's going to get these opportunities to show us who she is. And I think she's ready for that. She's, obviously for 2 years not being able to carve out meaningful minutes. A player like that was a projected top 5 or 6 pick, went to 12. Now we're going to see what kind of value did we really get. So we understood in that draft that was a player that was going to be stuck on our roster. And so now that that's flushed itself, it's her time. And I think she left feeling pretty excited about the opportunity. I told her we weren't going to sign over her. This was, and if we do sign over her, then we would give her the opportunity to be somewhere else, because continuing to play in that role is just not fair to her.
You mentioned needing to get on the phones and talk about remaking this roster. Is there anybody on this roster that you consider untouchable in that scenario?
There's nobody untouchable. I know that I think a lot of coaches or GMs would say that. There's certainly preferences. But I think that we're in a place that any phone call that comes and talk about anybody, you listen to it. That certainly, we've had labels of untouchables, in the past. Would it take a whole lot to move, a player or two? Absolutely. Absolutely. But at this point, we are open to how we have this roster shaped going forward. And that's not a place that we've been. We've had a couple of positions, 2 or 3, but not to this point now where we have a lot of work to do.
Cheryl, do you anticipate any stylistic changes or anything? I mean, whether it's shooting more threes or doing things like that to try and incorporate and adapt to what you're seeing from opponents?
First thing, actually wasn't the first thing at the end of the season. Through the course of the season, it's one of those things that, I'm a beat myself up kind of a coach, didn't love where we were, mostly offensively. Defensively, I thought we held our own until after the All-Star break, and our defensive rating just plummeted. But it's one of those things that what we did work for 4 championships in 7 years, and so it would stand to reason that that what we were doing was actually okay. And so I think that there's an opening now as a retirement, in the case of Lindsay, and then just our desire to, I probably change. That's probably the biggest word, to change. That style of play is going to go with that. Alexis Jones is a player that's going to be affected by style of play. I don't know, and she would probably question whether she was a fit in the way that this team did things. And that's a fair assessment. And so in order to bring out the best in Alexis Jones, we have to change. And so it's a little bit invigorating to now, there's the GM part. It's going to be a lot of work, but then there's the basketball part that I'm looking forward to. There's 8 years of doing things a certain way was obviously really good, and but as you mentioned, that things are changing, and we've got to change with it. I think we kept up as Brunson shot more threes, and Seimone became more accurate from 3. But it's even more than that. It's not just about. I don't want to be in the bottom of the league in 3-point field goal attempts. Just watching the Phoenix Con game last night. If I get one more text of God, they can just shoot it. They can. We just don't have that. Yeah, I understand. There's more than one way to win a game. Having Sylvia Fowles. But it's also a way of creating space and being able to, just like with Griner. Phoenix actually took off when they played, Bonner at the 4 more, and just 3 ballers all around her. That's a way to do it for sure. We'll look at everything, and certainly this coach knows that this is time to evolve and figure out our next path. Thanks for being here, everybody. See y'all.
You set me up. I want to be over here. This is like a whole press conference. Good morning.
Hi, Seimone. How you doing?
I'm great. How you doing?
All right. So are we going to see your smiling face on the court next year, or are you going to walk off into the sunset?
We'll see. No, I'm just playing. My plans are to be back, but obviously everyone reevaluates after the end of every season. So, I'll go home, enjoy some time with my family, and obviously discuss, what my future holds. But as for my plans, I do plan on being back.
Seimone, when you kind of look at this season, how do you balance sort of being appreciative of what everything you guys have accomplished over the last 6-7 years with whatever disappointment there may be that you weren't able to get a little further this year?
It's just that you focus on. We don't focus on winning enough. We kind of win, and then we put it in the back, and we keep pushing forward, like on to the next thing. And this is a moment where, no, we didn't end the season the way we wanted to, but it gives us a moment to reflect. Like, this team will be different, a lot different next year. And, obviously it'll give us time to think about the things that we were able to do as a group, as a core group of players. Just the run that we had, the championships that we won. The way that we played, the fight that we had, the pride, the passion, those are things that, it's very rare when you're talking about a team of great players. Like, it just doesn't come around that often. So, this is definitely something that, though it didn't end the way we wanted it to, we can take a moment and just kind of appreciate what we've done.
Hey, Seimone, how disappointing was it to end on this note, being the first round single elimination game?
Yeah, it's very disappointing. No one wants to end, the way that we ended, but that's the way the league is set up as far as the single eliminations, which are cool. But it also creates a very tough situation for every team. Even like last night with LA, they had to fly from LA and make it to Washington or whatever. So obviously we want to keep making this league better and keep making it fun for the fans. But we'll come up with new creative ways to keep pushing the envelope as far as our structure of the WNBA playoffs.
Someone you kind of in a unique position. You were here before this run started. You were part of the run. What do you see for yourself as far as your role in kind of leading or being a part of the Lynx franchise as it goes forward and kind of changes some things?
It's funny. They always say I'm like the anchor. And my role has changed, but I've always been like the anchor of this team as far as, our identity, personality, the keeping the team chemistry together, and that's possibly going to be the same role going ahead as far as just being here. It'll probably be a younger team, or I don't know what team coach is going to put together or replace players with, but I've been here, like you said, the long haul, so I know a lot about what Lynx basketball is and what it means, and so hopefully I'll be able to pass that on to the younger players or the new players that we will acquire in the off season.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Hey. Hey, Kent.
So Cheryl was telling us about your elbow injury. Maybe you could brief us a little about exactly what's wrong, how it happened, and how you've had to deal with it during the year.
The injury happened going into All-Star, probably like a week and a half before All-Star at practice. Hyper-distended. And I'm going to continue to play because I'm just that stubborn. And took ultrasounds and everything like that, and it was just a sprain. But I guess as we went along throughout the season, they gotten worse. And found out at the end of last season, and I have physicals that it was ruptured. So the UCL.
What's the treatment for that? Are you going to need some surgery?
That's up in the air right now. I don't think we would have to. If I can avoid that route, that would be that route. But basically just do PRP and pretty much let it heal on its own.
Were you planning to play overseas this winter or not?
No. I actually was thinking about just resting. I've been going. I think I should have made that decision last year, but ended up going late, and it just wasn't worth it body-wise.
So how much did that affect you during the season? I mean, you still put up great numbers and things, but what did it do for your?
Nothing really, besides the fact of it hurting every chance to get hit. But for the most part, like I said, I have a high pain tolerance. I'm very stubborn. So if I would have knew that it probably would have gotten worse as we continued to play, I probably would have still played anyway. I think Coach Reeve would disagree, but that's just who I am. I deal with the consequences. I don't think they're too extreme at this point, so we'll just roll from there.
And after the season has ended, what kind of, I guess, changes do you anticipate for this team going forward? Do you expect it to be a lot different next year? Not just Lindsay obviously retiring, but other things that are going to happen maybe?
I think we will see change, especially if we are trying to keep up with the league. We've seen a swift and a pace change, and players moving faster and jumping higher and being more athletic. So I think we definitely will have a change. I'm not sure how extreme that change will be, but I'm definitely sure you guys will see a change.
Does it feel like you're very far away from maybe jumping back into the real contention, I guess, or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we need some pieces here and there to get us back to where we need to be, but I think we'll be fine next year.
Yeah, so when Cheryl changed the lineup, put Ceci as a starter to try to create some more space for you, how much do you think that helped you?
It helped a lot because people couldn't really pinch off, and it kept things open for me, and it definitely made my job a lot easier.
Yeah, obviously Lindsay is already retired. Some of the other teammates of yours are maybe pondering it. Do you have any pitches to them, or do you have any insights as to what Rebecca and other folks are going to do next season?
I have no clue what they're doing. I guess that's a question you got to ask for them. I don't try to keep up with those things. I just try to stay in the moment. And right now, everybody seems like they'll be coming back. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Rebecca, how are you feeling?
Good, better, absolutely better. Of course, I wish I would have felt better a couple days ago, but I feel pretty good. Yeah.
Can you tell us what kind of concussion symptoms you had, and how long it took for them to subside?
Gosh, I mean, this is almost 3 weeks now, but just headache, nausea, some sensitivity to like noise, but those were the most extreme ones.
Do you have any of that anymore?
There's a little bit of it. There's a little residual, but for the most part, I feel like I feel pretty good.
We asked Seimone whether or not she was coming back. Have you given much thought to whether you're going to play next year?
You asked Seimone when she come. What'd she say?
She said she's coming back.
Huh? Oh, you asked Seimone if I was coming back or if she was coming back?
No. I asked Seimone if she was coming back.
Okay.
No.
And what'd she say?
She said that she probably is.
Okay. I think right now we're all just kind of trying to think about how this season went. I think we're still living in the aftermath of that right now. I don't think, personally, people have given too much thought as to next season. We're kind of thinking about where we were and what we could have done this year. But I think that we'll all talk to each other about that. But I think that for the most part, you'll see that group come back.
Rebecca, just how difficult was it for you to sit and watch there at the end?
Man, it was painful. I've always been a player that wanted to kind of do whatever I could to help my team win, especially in situations like that, kind of bring some type of energy and some defense and things like that. But it was hard not to be able to be out there and help them get through that stint. So it was unfortunate. I think that, this season didn't go the way that we wanted to go, and we kind of put ourselves in a situation where we were in that one and done. So I think that there are a lot of things that happened throughout the season that put us in a bad space that we could have kind of did a little differently, or we wish would have happened a little bit differently. But we'll learn from it. I think that we're a team that always bounces back, and I don't think that it's going to be any different.
Does it feel at all like a fork in the road moment for this group? I mean, obviously Lindsay's retiring, but do you expect maybe other big changes to come as you try to retool get back into the contention?
I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Of course, Way retiring is huge for us. She's been a part of this team and a part of this journey the entire time. So obviously that's a huge difference, and that's a huge change. So of course we're going to have to adapt to that. But as an organization, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we're in a better position next year.
Cheryl talked about the condensed schedule. We've talked about it all year. But as you look back on the season, how much of a role do you think that played particularly for this team?
I feel like we're a team that has always rolled with the punches. No matter what was going on, we had to play in different venues. We've had to practice in different venues. We had to adjust to some role player changes, and we've always figured out a way to be successful. So I'm not going to sit here and blame the schedule on, what happened. You have to adjust, you have to adapt, and you have to figure out a way to win games. And that's something that we didn't do. So I'm not going to blame the schedule. It's all about us. It's all about us figuring it out.
Coach has said that, obviously Lindsay being part of it, there are going to be changes next year. She's talked about, maybe looking at maybe playing with a different style. I mean, for you as a person who's here for all those championship all that runs, will it be hard, do you think, to go forward with it in a little different paradigm, a little different reality?
I don't think so. If you look at us as players, and if you look at us as a league as a whole, when this league stops, we have to go overseas. And that means that we're playing with different people. We're playing a different style. We're adapting. And that's just something that we'll have to do here. It's not something that any of us aren't capable of doing. We're very adaptive players. So no matter what the style is, no matter what it is that we have to do to figure out how to win, then that's what we're going to do.
All injury aside, what was your biggest challenge for this season?
I think that was one of the biggest challenges. I think this year was kind of weird for me, and having a lot of weird, naggy injuries that I usually don't have to deal with. So it was a little different. I think that was a little frustrating for me personally as a player. And I'm sure that there were other players on the team that had to kind of deal with that. But again, you just got to figure out a way. But that was frustrating for sure.
Rebecca, have you seen or felt any kind of wholesale changes with the league in terms of style of play, in terms of pace, or shooting threes more? Does it feel like the game is changing from maybe 4 or 5 years ago to you, or?
The game is changing, but there are definitely a lot of similarities. But the game is growing, for sure. And you're seeing that right now. If anybody's watching what's going on around the league with the playoffs, there are some teams that 3-4 years ago you may have counted out that are sitting at the top. So that means that the league is continuing to grow, and those players are getting better, and there are better players that are coming in. So that's huge for us. That's huge for this league. But we're just going to continue to compete. We're going to continue to grow as a league. We're going to continue to get better. And I don't think that that's definitely a huge change, but it's amazing to see the growth that's happening around the league.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Rebecca.
Cool. Oh, happy National Waffle Day. Everybody enjoy.
Ceci, this was your first full season in America and the WNBA. What do you think you learned as you think back from start to finish?
Well, I think I've learned a lot. So it's not really just a few things that I can say, because it's the whole process that I've been through. Like, I got here and I was still kind of scary about this whole league and everything, and I can see myself through every games and through the weeks that I've learned. I've grown, and I've learned how this league is working, how are the games, how are the plays, how everything for me was new, because I think the last season for me was just was so little, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. So I think that this season was like my first season. That's what I wanted to think, and to my way to think and my way to say it, because I really understand how this league works and what I can do and what I can be, you know. So yeah.
Do you know yet where you're going to play overseas, and what kind of skills this winter do you feel like you need to work on?
I will be playing Istanbul for Fenerbahce, so I've already signed with them. And I talked with coach and assistant coaches, and they told me that I still need to improve a couple of things of my game, and I will be ready to work on it. Like because before coming here, I wasn't even like a 3-point shooter, and this was what I was doing right here. So I think I just need to improve my way to play, like also from the 3-point line, but also inside of the 3-point line, as I was used to do in my overseas teams. And so try to be more aggressive, some things like one-on-one, try to finish at the rim, try to do more things in offense, not just shooting, just be a 3-point shooter. So this for sure. And also, of course, in defense, in this league, you have to be ready to focus to play against like the best player in the world. So to me, it was really a challenge to be here and try to play defense against players like McBride, Quigley, or Courtney Williams, some of those great offense players. So also in defense, try to be ready to guard some different positions, like the 2 or the 3, or maybe it will happen some 4. So just try to be as more versatility as I can, as I could be. So I will try to improve my stuff, and also some fundamentals that are obviously like skills. So yeah, these type of things.
Ceci, your role expanded as the season went along. Just how much confidence did you get in your game and yourself toward the end of the season when you're starting, you're playing bigger minutes and having more of an impact?
Well, it was a process, as I said, because I started, I wasn't really playing, and then I started like playing, and then I ended up to be in the first 5. So I think it was really a process. I was talking with coach. She said the team was trusting me. She was trusting me. So I think that in that moment I was like more confident in myself, because I knew that every mistake I would have made, it would be okay, because they would have trust. They had trust in me. So that was kind of like lighter me, like, you know. So yeah, I think it was a process, and I'm happy of my journey here. As I said, it was my first season, so I think it went good in my personal growth.
Do you feel like you are more comfortable as well, just in terms of understanding the other players you're going to play against, and just where you fit now going forward? When you come back here for next season, you'll be even more ready that way?
Yeah, as I said, this season I really understand how this league is working, what you have to do to be ready for games, how do you study the other players, how to be focused to prepare yourself to the game in offense, in defense. So it was a lot of things that I've never done. So I think my way to think is different now. I think about basketball, and I will try to keep this mindset also overseas, and try to be back next year. Not that I went back, but I start from where I will end like right here. So just to be able to go forward, to go ahead. That's what I will try to do. Okay, thank you. Hey guys. Oh, thank you. It smells like fish in here. Who brought the fish? That's terrible. This is going to be a 5-minute interview. Goodness. What is that?
Yeah, my
walleye?
I'll have to.
Maya, have you given much thought to what your off-season plans are going to be? Whether you're going to go play overseas? What are you going to do?
I'll be resting. Yeah, I'll be resting. So that captures a lot of what I'll be doing. Yeah.
So you'll just go home to Atlanta pretty much and just kind of chill? Is that what we're...
For sure.
Cheryl was in here before, and she was talking about the schedule and quoted you as saying that the schedule was inhumane. Now, I know that you've never been an excuses person, but now that it's all said and done, I mean, how much did the condensed schedule really affect you and affect your legs as the season went along?
Well, I mean, I think it affected everyone. So I don't think it was necessarily an advantage or a disadvantage for any one team. It definitely made the season more of a grind than as fun as it could have been, just because you weren't feeling great most of the year. But it is what it is, and we made the best of it, and I just tried to do what I could to make sure I was ready to play, and I found a rhythm for the most part. There are different stretches of the season where some games you just felt the fatigue, and it didn't feel good to feel that way, but in other games, it felt better, and again, you just try to get into a rhythm and hope you can perform as best as you can.
Maya, as the dust has settled here, how do you kind of balance maybe appreciating what this group has accomplished over the last 8 years with whatever disappointment there may be for the way it ended?
Yeah, I mean, it's constantly trying to appreciate, but also wanting to be better. In the years where we, come up short, it's always that weird balance of like, I'm happy that we did so great, but so sad that we came up short, or it's kind of the similar, even though each year is different. This year is different with appreciating even more of what we've done, and even appreciating the things that we did this year. We could have fallen apart, and we didn't. The adversity we faced this year was definitely enough, combined with our schedule, to break any team. And we stayed together. We worked through things, and we're resilient in our own way this year. So, the heart of the champion was still displayed, just in a different way. And of course, coming up short to a championship never feels great, but there's just so many things to celebrate, and the relationships and the growth from some players, and figuring out a way to figure out how to be successful in different ways with the challenges that we have.
How would you characterize your season individually? Did you feel like your game was where you wanted it to be, or how do you kind of reflect on your production, what you brought to the table?
I think I had, for my 8th year in the league, surprisingly well. I try to be as consistent as I can be. I've only missed one game in my whole career, and I'm pretty proud of that. To have all the expectations, and people have been game planning for me for 7 seasons now, and to still be able to contribute the way I have, to not hang my head when things got hard, to be able to still try to be a leader, and in a season where I could have just totally shut down and said, it's too hard, but I kept showing up every day and trying to do my best. So I'm proud of what I brought to the team. Obviously, shots don't go in, or you don't play as perfect as you want. Doesn't feel great, but I'm celebrating for sure.
As you think about the future, and even next year, how does this team get back to where it was? Obviously, be some different cast of characters, but what does this team need to get back to where you want it to be?
Well, I don't know if getting back to where we were is ever the goal. It's maximizing what you have each year, and something either amazing happens or something more than amazing, or each story, each journey has its own path, and I don't know if it's a good thing to compare one group's journey to another group's. I think you should stay in the moment and focus on what success looks like for each group, and I think our leaders have a good grasp on that, and we'll try to make that the focus. And then you look back at the end of the year and see, oh wow, we grew a lot. We were able to accomplish this, or we didn't accomplish that. So.
Yeah, Maya, you and your teammates have talked at great length about what Lindsay means to you, particularly off the court, the camaraderie, the kind of big sisterhood, all that stuff. Is that replaceable, and how much of that do you think you can bring to the table?
It's not replaceable. That's why it's so precious. You can't replace someone like Lindsay Whalen, but people can take the best parts of what she gave to them and bring that. I think that's the best way to honor her and to carry her legacy on, because we all learned and were inspired by her in some way, or many ways. That's the kind of leader she was. She was contagious, and I think you'll still see her effects on players. Obviously, how it looks with numbers and stats and actual basketball is, one player is obviously going to be a point guard, a starting point guard, and just try to think of the things she would say, or think of the things she would do or emphasize, and just try to continue to carry that on as a leader. One of the things she brought the most was just her connection and communication. So that's something that all of us can always try to emulate and bring, and will be a big help in continuing in the path of success.
What's up? Thanks. It's cold outside. You like it? It's Nike. What's going on? Opening statement. Huh? It's kind of dirty, too. Oh, well. Haven't had time to do laundry yet.
Well, Coach, has it hit you yet that you're done playing?
Yeah, a little bit. It was kind of weird yesterday, like just thinking and like saying you're retired. I feel so young yet. So, yeah, I mean, just a little bit. Obviously, it's so great I have something else to go into, because I'd probably be going nuts right now if I was looking at the next however long without something to look forward to. But yeah, it has set in a little bit these last couple of days that I'm done playing, and it was I feel really good. Like obviously the season wasn't great for us compared to what we've done these last 7 or 8 years, but I feel good that I feel like I really left everything out there. And so I feel like leaving the season, I was like, I don't think I could have really given anything more. So yeah, so that part I feel good about.
As you look back on the season, from a coach's perspective now, what were some of the challenges that you guys had, and why were you not able to get any farther than you did?
Well, I think at times, just the like we 6 to 7 years in the finals, and I think it just at certain points, I think just that mental just kind of caught up to us, and then the rest of the league has gotten a lot better too. But to go, and then the other year in there, we lost to Phoenix in the conference finals, and then everybody on the team is doing that overseas too, or in USA basketball. You're playing in a championship, and I think it finally kind of just was a year when the other teams, were better, and I feel like we've raised the level of the league in some aspects, and I just think at times it was hard for us to rise to that occasion. and then I think the schedule didn't really help. And like, I'm not making excuses. I'm just like thinking kind of rationally as to like looking back. You told me to think like a coach, so. And I think the schedule was. They need to take a look at that for these players for the next couple of years because for just player safety and to travel and to practice. I mean, we barely practiced. I don't know if we practiced in the last month. We didn't practice, so. Just as far as like the well-being of the coaches and everyone in the league, they need to take a look at that for sure.
On Tuesday night, you took the final shot of your final professional game. What went through your mind right after you took that shot and you walked off the court?
It's like, oh man, it rimmed out. Yeah, missed my last shot. So yeah, probably missed my first shot too when I was a rookie. So missed my first shot, missed my last. I don't know. I mean, I was just at that point. It was gonna be. You're just at that point, kind of. I got the ball, so I just was gonna run and shoot it, and so. Yeah, I don't know. Just like, yeah, that's it. Getting handshake line and then get with your teammates, basically.
Lindsay, when you watch kind of the way that the league has evolved and changed, I mean, what kind of stands out to you as to style of play, kind of the way, the athletes that you were facing on a nightly basis that may have been different from 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it just shows the growth and the talent. You play against some of the teams, Atlanta, the way Seattle's playing this year. It's really, it's great. It's great to see because it's super competitive. There's definitely room for a couple more teams, which is great with the talent that's in the league. So I think it's in a really good place right now. You see Asia Wilson coming in this year, what she's been able to do, and then hopefully that just continues to happen with every draft class. And so I think it's an exciting time for WNBA and women's basketball. Thanks, guys. See you.